Welcome to Run Mode, an industrial automation podcast by PowerMation. I'm your host, Terry Bush. In today's episode, we'll be spotlighting Festo, one of our amazing suppliers. Prior to 2018, PowerMation wasn't in the pneumatic business. We had a few lines, but it really wasn't a focus. We reached out to our customers through surveys and other methods and came to the conclusion that they wanted us to take on a pneumatic offering. They trusted our automation expertise and believed this would be a good fit. At that point, we reached out to Festo. They believed it would be a good fit as well, and that's when our partnership started. Today, we're joined with Lance Waffensmith and Dave Ellers, a couple of my business development colleagues who work closely with Festo, and John Bauer, an application engineer from Festo. You may have heard about a fast food chain's contaminated sliced onions. You ever thought about the effort required to track down that contamination? There's been a long history of food safety laws in the U.S. Most of the laws were created after an event to prevent repeat events. In 2011, the Food Safety Modernization Act was passed, which puts significantly more emphasis on prevention instead of just reaction. Why are these laws needed? Because 1 of 6 Americans get sick each year from foodborne illnesses, and 15% of the food supply in the U.S. is imported. How does this affect the industrial automation space? Just like with cybersecurity, the machine functional safety, every entity that touches food processing is now required to follow standards, even down to the equipment and the utensils used. For example, if you build a form-filled seal machine, the compressed air used must be cleaned and free of contaminations. And then there's the process inspections, the record keeping, the documentation. What happens when there's a recall? We could go on and on. It's an interesting topic. In recent years, supply chain issues have impacted nearly everyone. However, there's hope that we may be moving past these disruptions. The complexities of managing supply chains is akin to preparing a holiday dinner without certainty about the ingredients availability or the number of guests. Imagine planning a traditional holiday feast with turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, only to find out the ingredients availability is unpredictable. Furthermore, unexpected guests complicate the demand estimation. One might consider over-purchasing, but this could lead to shortages for others. Alternative options like pork or beef might result in spending more while feeding fewer guests. To prepare for the future supply chain issues, consider these strategies. Opt in for technology-specific designs. Calls for remote I/O bus couplers often come in due to vendor-specific protocol shortages. Open protocols can provide more functionality and more flexibility. Understand your supply chain. It's critical to have comprehensive understanding of the entire supply chain. Manufacturers will increasingly need to track supply chain and adapt to designs and specific specifications when supplies run low. By adopting these strategies, we can better navigate supply chain uncertainties and ensure smoother operations in the future. The notion that automation replaces unskilled labor while AI takes over for skilled labor is a topic of significant debate and analysis. Historically, advancements in technology have led to displacement of certain types of jobs, only to give rise to new ones. Here's a closer look. Automation, particularly in industries like manufacturing, agriculture, has historically replaced repetitive and manual tasks. Machines and robotics can perform these tasks more efficiently, and with greater precision than humans. While this shift can lead to job losses in some areas, it also creates opportunities for others, such as machine maintenance, programming, and oversight roles. AI has the potential to transform skilled labor. Tasks that require analysis, pattern recognition, the decision-making are increasingly being handled by AI systems. For example, data analysis. AI can process vast amounts of data more quickly and accurately than humans, offer insights that can drive business decisions. And in healthcare, AI assists in diagnosis of diseases and personalizing treatment processes, complementing the work of healthcare professionals. And in finance, AIs are used for trading, risk management, and fraud detection. What about the future of work? While automation and AI can displace certain jobs, they also create new ones. The key lies in adaptation and education. Reskilling. Workers displaced by automation can be retrained for roles created by technology advancements. And complementary roles. Many tasks will still require human oversight, creativity, and empathy, skills that are challenging for AI to replicate fully. The landscape of work is evolving, and embracing the changes with focus on continuing learning and adaptation is critical. Welcome. I'm sitting here with Lance, Dave, and John. We're going to start with Lance. So tell a little bit about yourself, how long you've been at Powermation, and what some of your expertise is.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, name's Lance Waffensmith. I'm the business development manager at Powermation for the Festo line. I've been with Powermation now 18 years. So my background, a little bit of background, I worked at a vendor, Pneumatic, which is also in Minnesota here. Worked there 8 years. Dealt with motion control products, pneumatic. Got more and more motion as things went on, and now I'm supporting a line that's got a lot more pneumatic content in Festo.
Yeah, and then in 2018 we decided to kind of branch out, because prior to that we were just electrical, and then Pneumatic, you had some actuator background, some pneumatic background, and then when Festo came on board, you're a natural fit to get into that pneumatic side. Talk a little bit about how that started and how we progressed in that pneumatics learning curve.
Sure. Yeah, so we reached out to the customer base in 2016, 2017, and we asked them to weigh in on products they would want us to carry. And overwhelmingly, our customer base wanted pneumatics. They thought they would, if we had pneumatics on our line card, they would buy them from us. And so the search began, and the timing couldn't have been perfect, because a year or two after that, we met up with Festo. And when the opportunity was presented to me, it was a no-brainer. I wanted to be a part of the growth that I knew that would come. So I started as a BDM exclusively for Festo, and ever since 2018, that's the role I've been in.
And we had a very, I'll call it aggressive learning curve to go through, because of our previous history being in electrical, not in pneumatics. So, and I know you kind of championed all the training, the course material, and just kind of pushing the sales team through to become more proficient. Not really fighting and screaming, but it's always a mind share game, right? So explain that curve for that first year or so, and how that kind of played out in the training side.
Yeah, well, we took on a new technology as a company. Powermation, our history was power transmission, automation, that's the namesake, and sensing, electronics was really our core at the time. We had a lot of electromechanical things, but our sales force had danced around pneumatics just on the fringes, but didn't have that inside knowledge base. So we began training, and we went through a monthly training regimen where we started with Pneumatic 101, learning valve schematics. Why do you need to filter air, regulate air, what valves get used, how you size them. So yeah, pretty extensive training that we did. And then we also took trips to Festo, and they hosted us in their factory training as well. And then after that, we kind of hit the ground running, and we ended up from what I'm told, we were the fastest growing distributor that Festo's had in North America.
And then based on that growth, we've added another business development manager with Dave. Talk a little bit about your history, where you come from, and sort of what role you play in that Festo piece.
Sure, thanks, Terry. So I've been with Powermation 26 years. Actually, this is the end of my 26th year here at Powermation, and it's been a great ride. I came in with a background in SCADA technologies, networking, also in PLCs and motion control from other distributors that I've worked for prior to Powermation. So when I had the opportunity to join Festo, it's kind of destiny for me, because back before we did the survey, there was a lot of questions going around of, what should we add, what should we do? And I always put down on our internal surveys, I'd like to see a pneumatics product line, because we didn't have one. So here I am now, after 6 years of having Festo, working with Lance, and taking on the Wisconsin territory for us.
And then you guys are sort of partnering, but also globally, but also kind of regionally. So you're sort of we'll say east of the river, and Lance is more west of the river, as they say, correct? Is divvying it up that way?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's correct.
Yep, you got it.
And then we have John from Festo. Let's talk a little bit about John and then get into some of the backgrounds on Festo, how long they've been around, whatnot.
All right, Terry. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. John Bauer. I'm an application engineer at Festo, specifically in the food and packaging market segment. That's been my main focus for the last 5 years. Previous to that, I've got a background in controls engineering, electrical engineering background, and with Festo, now I've moved more into the mechanical side of it. And my expertise is really going out and educating customers and getting them familiar with the Festo product, working with our technical distributors, educating them, and really applying products to unique solutions and just helping them through that, helping the customers through that process. So it's an exciting position.
Earlier you were mentioning there's like an anniversary coming up for Festo. They've been around for...
We've been around for almost 100 years. The company started out it's a German company. We started out doing really woodworking tools, if everybody's heard of Festool. And now that's the family it owns both parts of that, both the Festool and the Festo name. It's a family operation. It's still privately held, run out of Germany, but we are a worldwide company. So we have major offices in Europe, North and South America, Asia. So we're global based, very popular and big in Europe. We're one of the leading pneumatic manufacturers in Europe, and that's the kind of the direction that we're working towards in North America.
So what would you say the role of Festo would be in industrial automation? I mean, what does Festo bring to that space?
Festo is really known for, we like to think that we're known for not only pneumatics, but also our electric automation and our innovation. A lot of our profits are spent towards innovation, development, R&D, coming up with new products. If people are familiar with the Festo name or have seen some of the YouTube videos that we have out there and some of the unique animals that we've created using automation, that's a lot of how our new products are developed, is we emulate a lot of what's done in nature and we apply that to some of our new products. Some become products, some get shelved, and eventually they'll turn into something. So we're really an innovative company, and we like to develop and come up with new solutions for a lot of the unique problems that are out in the industry today.
Well, two words that come to mind are efficiency and productivity. How does that play into kind of that Festo mindset?
Well, when you talk about efficiency, there's really two ways of looking at it. When we think about efficiency, we talk about, well, energy efficiency. How do we become more energy efficient? The European model, we really stress energy efficiency. The cost of electricity in Europe is much higher. So there's a constant battle to drive down energy costs. So a lot of the products that we develop, a lot of processes we develop at Festo as a company are driven towards that energy efficiency. How do we make equipment more energy efficient and drive down the cost of the operating cost of equipment? The second part of efficiency is how do we make the employees, the workers, the engineers more efficient in the design process, the build process, the assembly process, the servicing process? Those are the tools that we're also developing to help increase the efficiency of the people using the products and applying the products to different applications. So when you look at efficiency, there's really two ways of looking at it.
Do you have a couple of specific examples of how efficiency or productivity is kind of baked into it, or how people would use that for their benefit?
Well, for instance, on the productivity side of people, or efficiency side of people, we have a lot of tools available, online tools for sizing and selecting products. So that's, those products are designed or created in such a way to help an engineer or a procurement agent go out and find the right product for their application make it quick and simple. So they're intuitive tools, meaning you don't need a lot of training in order to go use them. So they can be very basic, but they can be very powerful and make you very quick and efficient at selecting products. Once you've selected products, then it's the efficiency of having readily available documentation, spec sheets, spare parts lists, CAD drawings, all that information that you need now to take that product that you've selected and put it into a piece of equipment. Or if it's in a piece of equipment, how do you service it quickly? How do you find information on it? Those are the tools that we apply. From an energy efficiency standpoint, there's times that, for instance, last week I had a conversation with a customer. They were asking, hey, we have an initiative within our company that we need to reduce our energy consumption by 30%. Let's take a basic look at a machine. The machine itself, what can we do to make it more energy efficient? Well, it could be as simple as sizing a pneumatic actuator correctly, using the correct size valve, not oversizing a valve, moving the valve closer so that you're using less air. Those are the types of efficiencies that we're trying to work with customers to reduce their air consumption, which in turn reduces their electricity consumption.
One thing that I find sort of interesting is the circular thought around, okay, making something more proficient, right? So somebody can use it and they're going to be more efficient. But that requires feedback that kind of close that loop, right?
Right.
Voice of the customer. And so what do you have sort of mechanisms in place to allow people to give you that feedback so that when they realize something's harder, maybe if you tweak it this way, you make it easier to implement or easier to use? What are some of those mechanisms?
It's interesting because you think a lot of, well, when you're developing a tool, is somebody sitting up in an office thinking, well, I think this is a good idea for the population, let's just do it and we'll make it and they will come. Well, if you want to build a tool that's useful to somebody right out of the get-go, you want to make sure that you get that feedback. Well, how do you get that feedback? You go out and, like Lance said earlier, you poll them, you ask them, what do you really need? What works for you? You give them, we will do a lot of beta testing with new products as we release them. We'll give them to a set number of customers and say, use this in a real application. Let's test it. Let's put it through its paces. We've tested it in a lab. We know what it'll do. But when you apply it in a real application, what kind of feedback can you provide us? What can you tell us about it? What's good, what's not? And we can go back and tweak it and get it ready for final release out to the marketplace.
So the automation industry has changed over the years. All of us have been in this business for a very long time. How does Festo keep up with that ever-changing industry?
Well, you can't keep up with it. If you're going to be a leader, and that's what we look at ourselves as, we're trying to lead the industry. We're trying to drive the industry, and a lot of that is being part of the professional leadership of different industry segments. It's also coming up with the innovation and driving that innovation into the customers, into the industry, and helping dictate, or not necessarily dictate, but help direct the industry into the right solution. Getting them to think about different ways of doing things to help increase the efficiency, or going back to what we said earlier, how do you improve things so that it's actually helping and has some benefit, and it's not just always cost. There are other benefits as we look at what's happening in industry, and over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of change in the industry and how things work because we don't have the number of people to work. So there's been a big drive for automation. That drive in automation now has pushed back to the OEM, where the OEMs now have to come up with better, more efficient processes to build equipment faster and get it out the door. And they have less people to do it. And that efficiency drives back into the engineering and back to the suppliers. So it's a big circle.
Over the years, many, many years ago, when the automation industry was somewhat young, you'd do these leapfrog events where a vendor would leapfrog a previous vendor, and the change was so great, it was maybe obvious that you would switch to this new vendor. As time progresses and the area gets a little bit more mature, the industry gets more mature, you have, the leapfrogs are smaller, but they're much more
Pronounced.
leapfrogs.
Yeah.
There's a lot more of them as they jump over. So from a customer perspective, how do they keep up with those smaller leapfrog events to be able to kind of be more efficient in what they're doing?
You know, a lot of it is education. That's really what we do as suppliers, as distributors, you know, tech distributors. We need to educate the users. We need to make them aware of what's changing. They don't have time to go out and be looking through catalogs and keep track of everything that's new and may apply to their business. So we have to go out and make sure that we're keeping them up to date on what's happening, what's going on in the industry. How are we reacting to those changes in the industry, and how does that apply to you as a customer? What is going to be beneficial to you? Make that process simple, make it easy. The simpler it is, the more apt they are to come back and use it, to come back and talk to you again.
I know we do internal at PowerMation, and maybe Lance, you can speak to this as well, these assemblies that we build out so customer can buy an assembly as opposed to buying parts.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about how we got to that point and what some of those things look like.
Yeah, so one thing Festo does really, really well and has historically and will continue is they assemble components at the factory. So Mason, Ohio, customer can order a complete assembly of a valve manifold or an air prep system. But then dealing with supply chain disruptions or peaks in demand, sometimes those deliveries can stretch out. And so they've developed an assembly program, and what that allows us to do at the local level at PowerMation is put parts together in the same fashion, and we stock and inventory them locally so we can get those out to the market much quicker and be able to buffer that supply chain issue, or just have it next day, have it available on the shelf, real quick delivery, quick turnaround.
And at the end of the day, they're saving their own time because they're not sitting at a tabletop putting together all these little widgets,
Exactly.
8-10 hours worth of work or whatever the case may be.
Well, one of the things I'd like to add about the air prep that we do is it actually requires a test stand set up that when we put the air prep products together, we have to test for leaks and make sure that they're solid. Otherwise, going back to what you were saying about the loss in energy, that's a big dollar cost to customers for leaks that we have.
Yeah.
And then when you talk a little bit more on the customer side about, like, there's safety initiatives out there, more specifically food safety, but also machine functional safety. Can you speak a little bit about, like, the food safety, machine functional safety parts? I mean, that years ago wasn't unheard of. You just hooked an airline to something, you blew things up, and you didn't care if the air coming into whatever you're blowing up was dirty or not, but those things have changed, correct?
Yeah, I can answer the food safety portion of it. So, the food safety portion of it, during the Obama administration, there were some sweeping changes in the Food Safety Modernization Act. And those changes have been trickling down through industry. It started off with the large food manufacturers. It's now moving through the smaller ones and moving into those changes are now being seen by the OEMs, the machine builders. And those changes it's an education process. It's making people aware of, hey, these changes are out there. They're going to affect you somehow. When they do, when you get these specs from your OE or from your end user that's asking you to build a piece of OEM equipment, this is why they're asking for these changes or these particular specifications. And we can educate the customers on, okay, when you get these specs, this is how you meet these challenges. And it doesn't matter if it's a Festo product or a competitor product, there's ways to meet those challenges. And we just need to educate them to make sure that they're doing things right and that they're paying attention to the specifications and understanding why the specs are really there.
Yeah, one of the things I've known, and we've all learned over the years, is that it's hard sometimes for people to think about change. Because if I just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, it'll be okay. So when they do change, make recommendations or make redesigns and they run into problems, Talk about some of the things, the overlooked parts of this development stages that you guys have run into or that you've run into, and what are some of those oftentimes overlooked pieces to this brand new way of thinking and developing a new product or a new machine or something like that?
Yeah, it can be, it could be something as simple as just in the food industry, we talk about material compatibility. So when we talk about material compatibility, it's the compatibility between cleaning solutions and the objects that they touch. So what's going to happen during that process? Temperature, time, the actual solution material, what is the makeup of it? What does it do to it long term? Is it going to cause it to deteriorate or degrade? And being aware of that, that's something really very simple on the simplistic side. Something as simple as we talk a lot about fittings, okay? Everybody thinks, well, okay, if I put a stainless steel fitting in there, great, I'm covered for a washdown situation. Well, even as simple as the difference between an NPT and a metric G thread and how the threads are exposed and what that can do to trapping food and causing bacterial growth. Those are some of the simple things that we don't really think about until you get into a situation and then it's too late.
Yep.
And that's where the education process comes in.
And one of the things that's interesting too is when you think about like applying a product, life cycles, sizing it correctly, in the application that you're using it, all those kind of things. Have you seen large mistakes or maybe even small mistakes that are devastating that when somebody misapplied a product or sized it incorrectly?
Yeah, that's actually a good example. The misapplication of product can be, it can be if you undersize it, will it work? Sure, it'll work for a while, but it may fail prematurely and decrease the longevity of your machine. If you oversize it and say, well, geez, if I just put in something a little bit larger, then it'll last forever. But what does that do to it? Does it make it now consume more energy and become more inefficient? So that misapplication can be detrimental on both sides, whether you're undersizing or oversizing. And yes, that's a common issue. And that goes back to our productivity tools. Some of the tools that are offered out there to help you size things so that they're sized correctly, appropriately for the application.
Yeah, I was working on a project just the other day where they said, this is what you would expect for a load on this particular actuator. And then they said, but after 10 million or 10,000 kilometers, this is what you really should expect. And it's like, because after you use it for a very, very long time, it starts wearing down and wearing down and wearing down. Let's talk specifically about the focus at Festo. What do you do in your Festo role specifically, and some of the things? Where would people see you out in our environment?
Well, I like to joke. I make the salesperson's promises come true. That's my joke that I like.
I think that's what we all do.
Yes, but in reality, I work with customers. I solve problems, and that's what makes my job exciting. Is customers are constantly coming to us with unique problems every time, and you're trying to come up with a unique solution. Sometimes most of the times we hope that we can answer it with our products, because at the end of the day, it's a sale. But if I can't, I still like to be able to solve the problem for the customer in some fashion, because that builds credibility with the customer.
Yep.
I'm not going after the sale, I'm going after solving the problem. And that's the good part, that's the exciting part about my job. So I'm interacting with customers on a sales level, on a technical specialist level. I'm a subject matter expert in the food safety portion of it. Doing a lot of education, training from product training, basic pneumatic, basic electric training, up to programming and doing some of that educational portion too. And then outside of Festo, it's applying or taking that knowledge and also applying it to the young people in the world and helping them think about Festo, because someday they're going to be the future engineers.
Yeah, that's something that's important for us folks that are getting, we won't say old, we'll just say getting up there, is
Experienced.
training and education and getting the next generation up to speed.
Yep.
So if you had a crystal ball and you buffed it up really good, I know Festo is into electric actuation, but what are some of the other things that Festo, anything you can talk about, obviously, you don't want to give away any state
Right.
secrets,
Top
but
secrets.
anything that's really, really
Well,
and we're going to hold you to it too.
yeah, well, and it's being, having that production, it's really tough. The industry as a whole is, we're moving into a lot more automation. The food portion of it, traceability. So adding AI to systems, to machines, that machine learning, more data collection, being able to collect data, being able to have traceability. When we go back and look at some of the things that have happened recently in the news and the food recalls, there's all that traceability. How do you go back and find this happened and where did it come from and where did it get distributed to, so that we can trace that stuff back? We have to have smarts in order to collect that information and be able to tag that information to specific components. It's something the automotive industry has been doing for a long time, something the medical industry has been doing for a long time. Now it's being applied in other industries in order to do that. Festo as a whole, we are focusing more on growing the electric automation portion of it. The electric actuators, the motors, the drives, the I/O, the componentry to I/O link, safety devices. Those are the portions that we're trying to really focus on and grow, because there's that explosion of growth and that possibility that's out there.
Well, thanks for joining us today, John, and thank you, Dave and Lance, for attending as well and talking about Festo.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Terry.
For listeners interested in learning more about Festo, reach out to your PowerMation account rep or visit us at powermation.com. I would like to thank Lance, David, and John for being on the show today, and I would like to thank you for listening. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast to stay up to date on future episodes. See you next time.